Well, dude, it's amazing to me how a property, it shouldn't be offensive, but like it's not a big giant property. Like it's 120 acres, plus not counting the ag, and yet there's more like suspicion, more accusations, or criticisms than any other like deer hunting property that I know of. It's pretty fascinating. Like it's almost like a Area 51. I'm like, it shouldn't be this complicated. I can see it. It's right here on a map. You've invited us to come out and walk it. We're inclined to take you up on it. I'm like, what's the big mystery here?
I mean, there's people have said that, I've got high fences and with one little hole in them that the deer come in and out, where my captive deer used to be.
Mm-hmm.
None of that is true or accurate. And I would love for you guys to show up. I'll give you the grand tour and buy your lunch if you come back and report to your listeners the truth.
But you say that confidently, Don, because we're not going to be walking the property line against an 8-foot high tensile fence.
Well, I do have an 8-foot fence on one property line, and I've never ever tried to hide that fact.
Okay,
I've got one neighbor that has 5 acres, and that includes his house and his yard.
Mm-hmm.
That was and it sits right against my sanctuary,
mm-hmm.
and he was allowing people to come and hunt his property, and every deer they shot came out of my sanctuary. They shot it ran back into my sanctuary, and here the phone rings. I want to go look for my deer.
We hear that story
I
a
tried
lot.
talking to the guy. I couldn't work anything out with him. I said, okay, I'm going to solve the problem. I put an 8-foot fence down that side, and problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
Never have I tried to hide that fact, and I'll show you the fence when you're here.
So how long is that? What does that look like from a length side?
So he was originally, I went about halfway down a 40, the original 40 that I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I went halfway down my north side, and what happened was those deer it starts at the road.
Yeah. Right.
So on the end away from the road, the deer were cutting around the end of that fence and still hitting this guy's property.
Still dropping in.
I didn't really accomplish anything. So I ended up finishing into the corner of that 40, and then I made the turn and went just a little bit, and that solved the problem.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that makes sense on that side. And so, okay, minus that one, we're not going to go around and see other fences closing in your property.
Well, I wouldn't even phrase it like that. Like, let's dig into a fence conversation, I guess. We can start with your property and extrapolate it to just fences in general, I guess. So a lot of guys today are using fences to manipulate deer movement, whether it's, so you got perimeter fences, if I can classify them this way. You got a perimeter fence on 1, 2, 3, or 4 sides,
which is more for immigration, right? Like on and off property.
Yeah.
Would you classify for perimeter fence?
For sure. And then I would say you have food plot fences. So, hey, whether it's a 2-wire or you got an 8-foot to keep them out.
Which I assume a lot of us do. We just talked about Southern Ohio. It's like you want to grow beans in 3 acres, you best put a fence around that thing or it's going to get mauled.
So you got a food plot fence, and then I don't know what you would call an interior manipulation fence.
Like a movement manipulation.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's not a perimeter fence, something to direct movement in or around a certain part of the farm. I guess those would be the third, 3 types of fences that we're talking about.
Yeah, a diversion fence. And I do have one of those. It's probably, it can't be much more than 100 yards, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe between 100 and 150.
And is that what you would dictate as like a high fence or like just a normal low fence? Like
no, whenever I took those divider fences down in my captive deer pen.
Yep, just use them.
I had that fence laying around. I just used that. So yeah, it's an 8-foot diversion fence. Never tried to hide that. I'll throw out that I had classes, Whitetail Master Course. I called it on my farm for like 4 years. Just the last year that I had that, there was 150 students from 26 states that attended, and there's probably 500 total students that came to my farm. We walked right up to this fence. 500 people have been on my farm and seen this fence. And again, there's people out there trying to make this out as something that it's not. I've never tried to hide what it is. And in fact, 500 people have been on my farm and stood right at the end of this diversion fence and seen what it is.
Yeah. Does that diversion fence connect to your perimeter fence?
No.
No, it's like totally separate.
Just on its own little island there.
Is there something that you feel like is an end point of it? Is it like in your timber, or is it how do you use it? How does it benefit you?
Well, it's right at the edge of that 30 acres of timber that I talked about. And when the deer come out of that timber, they're going to hit a food plot on each end of that diversion fence. Or they could hit a switchgrass field. And without that diversion fence, there's that travel corridor between that wooded cover and the food plots and the switchgrass. That travel corridor is, 150, 200 yards wide.
Mm-hmm.
And that diversion fence takes that middle out and forces them around either side. I'm not going to argue with anybody about the ethics of it. I think everybody's got their own opinion.
Sure.
I don't try to hide what I'm doing. I'm honest. And if a guy is totally against it, no problem whatsoever on my part. I can tell you this, on my consulting visits, I'm looking at 70 to 80 some properties a year.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 years ago, probably about 10% of my clients would even consider a fence of any kind, perimeter, diversion fence, whatever. Now that number is 90%. And the reason for it is the biggest hurdle for us to grow giant bucks on any property is getting the age on them.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to anybody, it's, I don't shoot them, the neighbors will.
Yep.
And when a guy spends hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on a hunting property, and some guy next door doesn't even hunt, but he lets some guy come in and hunt that doesn't invest anything into the process, and that guy sits there and shoots one good young buck after another year after year, then it's just become way more acceptable. And the other thing is, I often say that the Midwest is Texas about 30 years later, because I remember when the Midwest, there was no such thing as a hunting lease. None. When I was younger, nobody had a lease in the Midwest, but in Texas, it was common.
Right.
Fences have been common in Texas for a long, long time. They are coming to the Midwest. There's going to be more and more every single year. I know people that have businesses doing nothing but building fences on hunting properties because of the situation. And in my opinion, it goes back to the game and fish departments. They refuse to manage for quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because they refuse to manage for quality, folks with the finances to do so are taking matters into their own hands. All right, if the state is not going to help us grow bucks to older age classes, if they're not going to manage for proper sex ratios, proper age structure, then I'm going to do everything in my power to do that. And guys, I'm telling you, 90% of my clients today are on board with a fence, when just 5 years ago that was 10%.
And we've tried that with these agencies. That
we agree with that assessment 100%.
Yeah, when the opportunities and the things, and it's like, guys, what you don't realize is, in your mind, giving hunters opportunities and more opportunities, the people who have the means to do so, and in today's whitetail society especially, are managing for bigger deer and own property or paying for leases, they will continue to isolate themselves one way or another, whether that's buying more land and kicking people off, getting more leases, kicking people off, putting fences up and blocking people off. Like, their mindset of opportunity is driving a bigger divider every hunting season, more and more. And they, for whatever reason, I won't say all of them, the majority of them are not comprehending it.
They just keep going. They're like, I think maybe we should, there's states even this season or last season that are like starting bait. They're like, let's incorporate this. This seems like a good idea. They're like, or it's a cash grab in a lot of cases, or, you see crossbows are now, I don't know if it's 100%, but it's, dang close. And they're not perceiving that, like, the increased opportunity that they're giving everyone is driving a wedge, like Jeremy said. And it's like, he who has the highest fence and the biggest corn pile wins.
And I will never, ever try to talk someone into a fence. If they don't want it, I totally understand, respect that opinion. But in my opinion is that, let's just use that diversion fence I got. Let's say it's 120 yards long. Is that any different than if I piled up trees 15 feet high for 120 yards? Is it any different if I took big round bales of hay, lined them end to end for 120 yards? It's just a different structure that's going to dictate deer movement.
Yeah.
And it's a little more permanent than those other things, but does the same thing.
Well, and I would argue to a point like that diversion fence maybe is making you more lethal, but it's not necessarily protecting deer more, right? Like a diversion fence in the property is used more from a hunting strategy, not necessarily a management strategy. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
And the perimeter fence that I got on my north side, I wish that thing wasn't there. I wish I didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't, I was going to lose so many young bucks that I might as well just quit the whole management program. But at the point that I built that fence, I'd invested my entire life into this project. Every spare penny I had. I was not about to let these people show up that have never invested anything in the local deer herd, sit my line and shoot deer as they come out of my sanctuary, have them run back into my sanctuary, and then expect me to let them go get them. And I also want to throw out, just to clear the air on some false narratives, I have never, ever denied anyone an opportunity to track a deer onto me that they shot.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I went with them and helped them track deer that they've shot that ran on me. So, there's just a lot of, I hate to say it, but I think there's a lot of jealousy, and I don't know if I'd even call it misunderstandings, but people are looking for excuses on why somebody was successful, and they come up with ideas, and sometimes those ideas are even plausible. I mean,
you're like, that's a good idea.
Yeah. It's plausible to think that a guy that once raised captive deer might have turned some loose.
Take me